Hello, everyone. This is Jimmy Cultist, back again with another logic video. This time we're going to talk about how to stagger enemies with a block or with a well-timed parry. I know I've covered the parry before, but this is slightly different information concerning the block, so I'm going to go ahead and show it to you. Now, this is an older game that I made, or at least a demo for an older game, so the logic is a little bit less streamlined than I would have had originally. But I've made a few additions and a few alterations. Just the overall structure is muddy, but since the rest of it isn't really anything we're dealing with today, just ignore all these wires and rigmarole. The primary thing we're talking about is how to stagger an enemy, so first thing I'm going to go into, if I can find the shield. This right here is the shield. It should be labeled. It's a keyframe, but really I probably, in hindsight, you know, this selection system's all muddy too. But in hindsight, I'd do something like this. I just have like all the logic necessary for the shield inside a microchip. There's some other logic here. Ooh, sorry about that visibility. These sparky effects are really bright. But if we put on X-ray mode, you'll see this little microchip on the shield labeled STAGGER. I don't think it really needs to be in here. I would move it back to this chip. And this is basically working on the old methodology of the Zelda games, where if you just have the shield equipped, you know, it's automatically blocking unless you're attacking. It's like how the older, you know, top-down Zelda games used to work. I will be covering how to parry things with the shield, similar to the newer games, but this is the old-fashioned way, just to start out with the basics. So we've got a trigger zone called E-stagger, or at least it's set to detect a tag called E-stagger. We got this little zone here of appropriate size. You can make it bigger or smaller depending on your positioning. I've got the pose, which doesn't really matter that much. And I've got an enemy over here. I'm going to go ahead and hide his hitbox so that we can maybe see him a little better. This is the enemy. And he's got a bunch of attacks, and he's got parameters and things, and those aren't really that interesting to talk about. But I will go into one feature. Inside this timeline, set to play once. It's a little cluttered in here, not a big fan of it. There's this timeline set to sustain, which is his attacking timeline. Damage and such. And I've got this little tag in here called E-stagger, which is a little bit in front of him. And that's basically going to trigger this little baby here, although it won't do anything on that end. You could set it up to make him flinch, maybe, you know, like slightly fall backwards or something, like if you just wanted him to flinch a little bit when he gets hit. You could just take the power output from this and hook it up to a timeline and shut off the pose, of course, unless this is the visibility. I'll have to look into this. Is this the visibility? I don't think it's the visibility. I think it's just the pose. But if it's the pose, you could just turn it off with a timeline. Like so. Set it to play once, connect a node, connect a NOT gate to the node, open it up with L1 and X, put this little thing here, copy out the timeline, delete the switch, pull it in, make sure it's set to sustain instead of play once. Keep this one on play once though, this one's important to be that way. Also, I probably would use an action recorder, but, you know, instead of these, I would probably use an action recorder instead, but these little keyframes are just quicker, so... That should do it for a animation. Very simple, but it will cover the basics. And I guess we would want to shut it off, so I'm going to go ahead and take out an action recorder, set to keyframe mode, and just turn off the power of this thing. L1 and X... oh wait, I should say L1 and square if you want to open up this menu during keyframe recording mode. It's pretty simple. And I'm going to turn the enemy on so that we can start messing around and seeing him in action. I also might turn off the spotlight shadows or studio lighting or whatever it's called. But anyway, also we won't really be needing that. Here it is, STAGGER. That's what I'm looking for, and it goes into this microchip here called Stunned, a node with a NOT gate connected to it, and a timeline set to play once, a switch on the timeline which connects to the NOT gate, and another timeline on the timeline set to sustain with a stagger animation using linear blend keyframes. That's the stagger animation. I also have this action recorder which shuts off his attack chip, and by virtue of that would interrupt his attack, which is, you know, the switch connects to this timeline. So basically as soon as you shut off this chip, his attack is null and void and will not play. Even if it's set to play once, it won't play because it doesn't have power. I've also shut off his parameters, which are his procedural animations. Go ahead and show you those. This wire from this switch is connected, so when we shut off this, we're shutting off the procedural animations. But also his movement options, and those are right here. This NOT gate represents those, but basically that's just follow and turn towards. I also shut off all of his animations, such as his jump animations and his poses, just in case. I don't know if it'll be highly necessary, but that's what we did, just to be extra certain that nothing's playing. I also have this little tiny mover set to 1.4, and it's on local space, and it's facing behind him. L1 and square if you want to open that menu. But basically that's his stun animation. And now we're going to go ahead and demonstrate. Equip the shield. You'll see he's staggered backwards. Not sure why the sound effect isn't playing anymore. Maybe we've got to move something. Oh, also his thrust is a little bit out there. That's probably because I had to move the timeline earlier. So his little thrust speed lines are in the wrong position. That's probably what might be happening with the ricochet. Speaking of the ricochet, it's probably better just to Let me try this again. Did it even trigger the animation? Yeah, we have the animation of our character flinching. So it'd be better just to put the sound effect right there. I think this is actually where it goes to. It goes into damage. I had a special damage setup for when you get hit, but I think I'd abandon that in favor of just putting it in here, because it's a lot simpler. That's why the sound effect isn't playing. I think that the speed line, I made this character a little bigger. Originally he was smaller. I made him bigger so you could see him, but it doesn't really work with the speed line anymore, so I'm just going to delete that, even though it isn't really important. But we've already showed you, you know, basically just using a... Just to go over it real quick, just using a tag called STAGGER connected to a timeline in a separate chip set to play once, you can create a nice little window of opportunity for you to attack, and also a stagger animation for your player character at the same time. Oh, also, let's get rid of this. Also, if you'd like to have a damage animation that interrupts his stagger animation, simply go in here to currently losing health, connect it to a timeline set to play once, yada yada yada. I'm sure you're familiar with this. And this is a little outdated, having the node connected. I'd probably just put these keyframes on a timeline nowadays. A separate one within the timeline. But Action Recorder, shutting off the parameters, but also shutting off the power to all of our combat chip, you know, logic, meaning that the animation and stagger will be briefly shut off during your attack. Honestly, this guy is a bit of a pushover and probably doesn't need a stagger, but I'm just doing this for the sake of demonstration, you see. Now I might show you how to repel an enemy attack. I'm going to get rid of this neutral block that we have currently, and I'm going to show you how to repel an attack just by using the shield bash. Now, I will probably want to have it so that the pose is connected now to a node. And the reason being is we're going to want a block button. I'm going to go ahead and put that in there. L2 is what we're going to use to block. And I'm going to use R1 to parry. I'm also going to use a calculator because L2 and R2 have this unique pressure system that I'm not a big fan of, where you have to press them down a certain amount to get them to respond properly. So I'm just going to use a calculator set to greater than 0.01 into the node. That should probably do it. Yeah, that's us in our blocking formation. It's interesting that he's still bouncing off of our shield. I don't know if that should even be happening. Let me take a look. I'm going to power this on. Okay, you want this to be off. Real quick. I want to say that he's not really... Man, what's doing that? Well, it looks like we're automatically blocking. It's probably this. Let's try it again. Just get rid of it. How is he doing that? That is a mystery to me. Okay, I'm just going to delete that and See if that gets rid of the problem. Alright, that does. Now, him flying that far is not very good. But honestly, we don't even need the mover. Let's just put it down to 1, so he won't fly off like that. The main thing is, he would be damaging us. Although I'm not sure why he still flies like crazy. That's weird. Oh, it's because it's this one. Anyway, he would be damaging us, and he technically is. No sounds are coming out, but he is damaging us. That's the main thing that I wanted to demonstrate. Also, let's go ahead and put on our shield just to see if he'll... Alright, he's not bouncing. He's also not hurting us, but it doesn't really matter. The main thing is we just want to be able to hold up our shield. And while we're holding up our shield, we want a little AND gate connected. And I've already got a deflect feature going on down here. Well, that's our player deflect. Our item bash is actually where we'll find our deflect feature. But basically, we'll just want a little not gate, not a not gate, an AND gate going down here. And we're going to take the input, which this is the R1 input from the controller, just so you know. And we're going to stick it into B. And this is going to create a little... Let's kind of make him chill out while we're testing this. Alright, block, bash. So at the right time, we're going to do this little bash or parry. And I'm going to make it so that that deflects his attack at the right moment. Now, in order to do that, we're going to have to look at what we've got inside our dear little shield bash. And it's a thing called reflect, which I made it to reflect rocks and things that get thrown at you. But in this case, we can also make it so that the enemy's stun ability is triggered. So we're going to change this from E stagger to E reflect. That way he'll get staggered. Now let's go ahead and power him on again. Now that our shield is equipped. That's strange, he doesn't seem to be coming toward us. Okay. That's solved. Alright, so he's attacking, and we're going to do it the right moment. There. Knocked him back. Although that was a bit of a harsh knock there. I think there might be some other logic at play that I forgot about, because he's not supposed to fly away like that. It's probably this light attack, maybe? I imagine that's responsible. Probably what it's doing is it's like triggering another status effect, because I think I have like a light knockback effect for him. It's probably this. Reflect is hooked up to it. Just don't put that in there and you'll be fine. Alright. At the right moment. Now the window of opportunity is a bit blah. I'm not a big fan of it, so let's make it a little longer. This is right about when he's going to attack, so I think that should be a good window of opportunity. And we're also going to increase the amount of time on the shield bash, or reflect, so that there's a little bit more chance for it to intercept his attack. And Also, let's make sure that reflect is nice and big. Yeah, it'll definitely interact with him fine. Alright, let's let him attack. Doesn't seem to be working. That's very odd to me. What could be going wrong? Oh, I think it's because it's called E-reflect. My mistake. I tend to put E to distinguish because I have enemies and I have the player able to sometimes get reflected or staggered, so I sometimes put E at the beginning. My mistake. Anyway, let's set it to tag. Make sure that it's all right there. Alright, let's let him do it. At the right window. Try it again. Still doesn't seem to be functioning. Is there something we are forgetting? Is the power off? No, the power is on. I'm gonna check real quick just to make sure the right timeline is being triggered. Oh, the bottom timeline is the one that's being triggered. Okay, that explains a lot. Sorry about that. We make mistakes sometimes. But yeah, that's because we've mislabeled this and we haven't been doing it right. Oh, what a whole lot of nonsense. But here we go. Let's try it. There, at the right moment, we staggered him. I don't like the feedback much. Like, I would probably put some sparks or something coming out. Maybe a better sound effect. Sound effects are a lot of, like, why this stuff even works, to be honest. Let's try it again. But yeah, if you just follow that exact pattern of putting the reflect option around the time where the attack is, and then putting the right appropriate trigger zone with the appropriate label at the point when you're going to deflect it, that will parry as ordered. So hopefully you find that useful. Sorry that the logic is old and cluttered. I wanted something a little more visually stimulating than blank puppets. I could have built the logic fresh and it all would have looked a lot more clean, but I thought it'd be neater to have an actual environment. And most of the other logic isn't really important. It's just that main little feature of the tag, the keyframe, and the appropriate stagger animation when he's struck. But I hope that you found that useful for any kind of game you're going to be making.
Thanks for watching. If you have any thoughts, leave a comment, and if you enjoyed the video, leave a like. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you don't miss future videos. That's all for now. Goodbye.